Welcome to today's Seven Figures Club podcast episode, guys. Today we are in for a treat. We have Jim Britt. Jim is world famous. He's worked with some of the greats from Tony Robbins. His business partner was Jim Rohn. And I just want to read a quick little excerpt about his bio. So Jim's background spans all levels of experience and application. In addition to the many businesses he's launched over the years, he started his career as a business partner, like I said, with the late, great Jim Rohn for almost 10 years. Tony Robbins worked under his direction for his first few years in the seminar business. Jim's worked with more than 300 corporations around the world as a performance coach, helping executives and their employees and field leaders improve performance, access their true potential, and he live lives filled with personal and professional advancement. Today, Jim presents seminars on personal achievement, entrepreneurship, small business success, network marketing, leadership, and all aspects of peak performance. He's also an amazing father of 6 sons. Is that right, Jim?
That's right, 6 of them.
Wow, pretty amazing. 6 sons, most of them entrepreneurial. And today, Jim has addressed thousands of audiences across the world, totaling well over 1.5 million people, all walks of life. He's made a tremendous impact. Jim, welcome to the show.
There are over 32 million businesses in the U.S., and over 90% of them will never break 7 figures in annual sales. So how do we as entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs break into that 7 figures club? This podcast will relentlessly share the secrets, strategies, and tactics I've used to create 3 multi-7 figures businesses and bring in even more successful entrepreneurs than me to share their inspirational stories and tactics to success. You can create your dream business and life right now. So buckle up and let's go.
Hey, thanks, Leo. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
So we're excited to learn more from your journey, which has been a lifetime of entrepreneurship and making a massive impact on entrepreneurs, humanity, our country. But let's talk about, Jim Britt back when he was young and he was growing up. What was your childhood like? And what was Jim like in high school?
Well, my childhood was, I would say we had a very loving family. I had a brother and 2 sisters, my mom and dad. I never saw them fight. They weren't substance abusive or anything like that. They didn't drink. They did smoke. They smoked cigarettes, but they were just, a common family, poor, loving, tried to take care of everybody that they could. And I got my first job was at 6 years old and was picking cotton. Now,
really? And where was this at, Jim?
In Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
That's where I grew up. I tell people I escaped from there when I was 29, but I grew up in Oklahoma, and we had a tough life, in a way. But yet, looking back on it, it was a great life. Even though we were poor, we didn't have much money. We had food to eat, but sometimes barely. And we moved, I would say, well, I never went to one school for a full year until I hit the 9th grade.
Wow.
So
you're moving every year practically.
We moved all over the place. I mean, we lived all over Oklahoma. People say, what part did you grow up in? I don't know. I grew up everywhere, except
all
for the Northwest. I never lived in the Northwest part of the state, but it was tough in that area because making friends, I was a pretty quiet person. So trying to make friends was hard. And I'd finally make a friend and then we'd move. And then I'm in a new school and I'm thinking everybody's looking at you, and you know how kids are. And I'm off in a corner shy. And so that part of it was hard. But then I look back on that now and I'm going, that's probably pretty beneficial because now I can meet people anywhere. It doesn't matter. I have the confidence to do that. So maybe I went through a lot of that for a reason, but picking cotton taught me something. First of all, I made 2 cents a pound, 2 cents a pound. Wow. And cotton doesn't weigh very much.
Pretty light.
The whole family would go out and pick cotton. That's how we made money for school clothes and school supplies and things like that. But we'd pick for about 3 months out of the year. And it was usually in the fall of the year, and actually the schools let out for cotton picking season, so for at least a couple, 3 weeks. So, but I learned from that you really don't get ahead working hard, working with your two hands. You can only do so much. Unless you're programming something or designing something with those two hands, but working hard. It taught me a lot. It taught me a work ethic, for one thing, because I always would strive to be better than I was the day before. And so I had that ambition, but, never got ahead. And of course I did cotton picking until I was, I guess, about 12. And then I dropped out of high school in the 10th grade. I was not a good student. Up until the 8th, I was pretty good. But after that, I don't know. I think I skipped more school than I went to. Some classes I just never went, and they never missed me. So I just didn't go. 10th grade, I dropped out about halfway through, and that was it. I got married at 18 on a Friday, and Monday I started my full-time job pumping gas. And so I worked there for about 2 years, and I made $1 an hour and worked 60 hours a week. Tough job, but yet I tried to be the best I knew how to be. And we survived on it. And that my dream job was working in the factory on the assembly line and up the road about 10 miles. And but I needed a high school diploma to work there. I took the general GED, I think they called it then, or the high school equivalency, took it twice, flunked it both times. So still wasn't.
I've heard it's actually a really difficult test, and it's way easier sometimes to actually be in school.
Yeah. I made like a 50% the first time and like a 59 the second time. So I didn't make it. So I thought, well, that's never going to happen. My dream job is, I'll never get it. And one day a guy comes in the station that's been in there a few times, and we got into a conversation. Turns out he was a supervisor. And he said, man, you should be working in the factory. And I told him, no diploma. And he said, I can pull some strings. He said, if you'll come in and take this kind of a dexterity test, can you put square pegs and square holes and that type of thing? He says, I'll get you on. Week later, man, I got my dream job. And so I worked
working at the factory.
Yeah. And it was $1.67 an hour. So I got a raise, but I only got to work 40 hours a week. So, I didn't financially didn't do any better. I just got to work inside and work 40 hours a week. And it was late one night. I was working the swing shift, and a guy comes by my area that I kind of knew casually. He was from another area, and he's spoken a few times. And he stopped and he said, "Hey, Britt," he said, "You going to work in this factory the rest of your life?" I'm going, "I don't know, man, maybe." And he said, "Well, come go to this meeting with me tomorrow night." He said, "Your night off." He said, "Come go to this meeting with me. I think it's something we can do to make some extra money." I said, "Well, what is it?" He said, "I don't know. They just told me to bring somebody with me." And I said, "Well, I'm not your guy." I said, "I'm not going if I don't know what it is." He said, "Come on, man." He said, "I'll buy the beer afterwards if you go." I said, "Well, what time is that meeting?" So I went for the beer, not for the meeting. But I sat through a life-changing event for me. It was about an hour long, and about halfway through, this fellow started talking about the amount of money you could make. And I sat up in my chair. Boy, the lights went on. And the more I watched it, I said, I can do this. I can do this. And I said, not only can I do it, but I'll get rich doing it. And I didn't know what rich was really, but more than I was making. But I saw people there that were making $8,000, $10,000, $15,000 a month back in, like 1970. I'm going, wow, that's a lot of money. I mean, I didn't make half that in a year. So at the end of the meeting, the guy says, well, you can start for $3, $300, or $4,000. And I had $3. Actually, I had $9 in the bank. That's all I had. And for some reason, I said, I'll do the $4,000. I didn't even know anybody that had $4,000. And so I told him I'll go to my bank and borrow the money. Well, my banker turned me down, and I threatened to move my $9 out of his bank into another bank, and didn't seem to bother him that much. But I went to another bank and filled out an application, and another bank and another bank. I exhausted the bank, started going to loan companies, these high interest rate loan companies. On number 23, which was the last one that I could find, that guy loaned me the money, and I got started.
Okay.
And I was so determined, but the guy that night, he said, he did a little training. He said, your job is talking to people. He said, if you talk a little, you'll learn a little. If you talk a lot, you'll learn a lot. And I said, well, how much is a little? He said, 1 a day. I said, well, how much is a lot? And he said, 10 a day. I said, I'll do the 10. So I quit my job the next day at the factory, which I shouldn't have done, but I did. And I went out to talk to 10 people every day. I had no idea what to say or how to sell anything. And every day I talked to 10 people for a year.
And what are you selling? What is the product
soap,
or service?
Soap.
Okay.
So it wasn't Amway, but it was a company kind of like that.
Okay.
And it was, and I was selling the business opportunity. They said, that's where you make your money, setting up other distributors. And so that was really what I was focused on more than selling a product. And so I went out there for a year. And at the end of the year, I had talked to 3,650 people minimum that all told me no. and I had lost my home. I had a notice on the door from the sheriff saying, you got to be out in 5 days. I'd lost both vehicles. I lost all of my furniture. My phone was disconnected. Everything was gone. I had a wife, a child, and 15 cents in my pocket. And the one thing I knew I wasn't going to do was quit. Now, I probably should have. There's probably 100 times during that year that I could have quit and should have quit, but I didn't. I just kept going. I started losing things and foreclosure, and I just kept going and kept going. I thought, it's got to happen sometime. and I kept hearing these other people making all the money, and I couldn't figure it out. So there was a knock at my door, and a fellow shows up from the company, and he said, I understand you're a hard worker and you're not making any money. We sat in my floor for 2 hours, and he taught me what I needed to be doing and what I was doing wrong. And the next month I made $2,600. The next month after that, $6,000. Then it went to over $12,000. And within 6 months, I was making $40,000 a month. And that was a lot of money.
And this is the 70s. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. And I took some of that money and invested in another business, not the same type of business, but another business. And by the end of my second year as an entrepreneur, I was a millionaire. So that's how fast, and I could have quit. And if I'd have quit, I'd have probably gone back to the factory and got my old job back. But I didn't quit. And
Jim, that might be the best story I've heard.
Valuable lessons.
That's unbelievable. So in year one, you dive completely in. You're not getting any traction, no sales, and you're losing everything. You know, you've got a wife and a child to provide for, and then at the key thing, this guy from the company comes and sits down. What does he tell you? What does he ask you? What changed after that sit down?
So he says, well, tell me about what you're doing. So I told him, 3,650 people and how I track my numbers and all of that. And he said, well, obviously that's not working for you. And he said, let me ask you this. He said, how do you know if you have a viable prospect? I said, I guess if they buy from you. He said, no. He said, how do you know if they're even a potential to buy from you? I said, I don't know. He said, well, obviously you don't. He says, let me give you a hint. He said, you have to arrive at 3 destinations in order to have a viable prospect. Number 1, do they have a pain or a problem? Number 2, do they want to solve it? And number 3, can you solve it? He said, if they don't have a pain or a problem, you don't have a prospect. If they don't want to solve it, you don't have a prospect. And if you can't solve it, you don't have a prospect. So he said, you got to have all those 3 things in alignment. And I said, well, how do I know if they have a pain or a problem? He said, well, it's not what you've been doing. He said, you've been out there flapping your jaws for a year and getting no results. So it's not about talking. He said, a hint. And I said, I don't know. And he said, it's about asking questions. How are you going to discover whether they have a pain or a problem? He said, you go into a car dealership and first thing you do when you put your leg out the door, somebody comes up to you and said, what are you looking for today? And, what model, what color, what price range, what payments, he said, they're qualifying you. And I said, they're trying to figure out if you're a prospect. So he said, you got to ask questions and listen. And I said, well, what kind of questions? He said, it really doesn't matter. I'm getting confused now and going, well, why doesn't it matter? He goes, you've got to get into a conversation. He said, if you're at a party someplace or you meet somebody, out in the park or wherever you meet somebody, he says, and you want to get to know them, what do you ask them? I'm ask them what kind of work do they do? Or, do you have a family? Do you have kids? Do you have, what do you do for fun? He said, yeah. I said, but how's that going to tell me anything? He said, you get into a conversation and you ask questions and listen, they're going to unload every problem they've got on you if you want to ask that many questions. And I said, okay, well, I'll try it. He said, but you got to listen. He said, that's the key. Ask the question and be in tune and listen. He said, then here's another thing for you. He said, if you live your life this way, you'll never lack for money. He said, every time you meet a person, always be thinking, what can I do to help this person? He said, not about selling them something. He said, if you're just, on an airplane and you meet somebody, he said, just be thinking, what can I do to help this person? He said, maybe you're giving them a referral, maybe whatever. And I've lived my life that way since. And it's the most beneficial thing. I've helped so many people not getting paid for it. I'm not selling something. I'm just looking for what can I do to help that person. And I'm always looking for that pain or problem that I can help solve. And if I can solve it, I'll solve it, whether I get paid for it or not. And I've developed an incredible network of people all over the country, all over the world, actually, as a result of that. So it's a great philosophy, no matter what you do for a living. So,
Jim, what you've just shared there today is more valuable than any business MBA or any expensive university degree will ever teach us. And that's that find someone who has a problem, find out if they want to solve it and then solve it for them. And it's funny, I'm reading a book, one of my mentors said the same thing. Hey, if you can solve a problem that people have better than anyone else, you'll never have any issue finding business. And for you now, after you learn that, you went from that's the rags to riches story in about 2 years. That's just fun. I mean, simply remarkable.
In fact, I'd never deposited a check more than maybe $60 or $70 ever. And, with my weekly paycheck, $1.67 an hour, take out taxes. And, I didn't have much left. And I remember depositing the $2,600 and I was a little nervous about that. But when I went to $6,000 and I remember walking into the bank with almost a $40,000 check and I'm going, are they going to think I stole this or what?
Probably.
It was going against my self-worth. At the time, I'm just going, 40,000. Am I worth this? What are they going to think? I walk into the bank and the banker that turned me down for the first loan, now he's calling me Mr. Britt when I walk in the door. So it was quite a turnaround. It felt good, but. Yeah. And, today people ask me, how do you handle rejection? And I'm going, I did that already. I did that for a year. I don't have to do that anymore. I had plenty of rejection. I learned to eat it for breakfast. And he said, well, what do you do when you get down? I said, I've been down. I don't go there anymore. There's nothing down there. So why go there? It's all made up stuff in your mind anyway. So just make up something better, keep moving forward.
Jim, let me ask you something. So if you had not gotten the $4,000, up the top level, top tier package, and you'd gotten the $300 or the $3 one, do you think you would have, do you think you'd be where you're at right now?
I don't think so. Because it would have been easy for the $3 package, but there was no money in it. You really didn't make any money. And in the $300 package, maybe you could make $200-300 a month, maybe. And that didn't interest me because I was already doing that. So it just, in fact, the fellow doing the meeting, as that $4,000 package, he wrote the figure $2,000 a month up on the board. And that's when I really set up and thought, $2,000 a month, man, this would be, I could get a new home. I could do that. All this stuff going through my mind. And I just committed myself right then. And I've learned something over the years, not only from my own experience, I've learned from other people's experiences as well. And, a lot of the people that I hang around with, the top speakers and people like that. But I interviewed 12 mega millionaires and 1 billionaire. They all were worth over 200 million, and they had to have started with nothing, and they were all in different industries. And I took a camera crew around the country and interviewed these people. And it was fascinating. About the second or third interview, I'm going, this sounds familiar. It's almost like they have the same traits. And sure enough, pretty much every one of them had a different way of saying it, but they had the same traits almost exactly.
Let's define those. What are those values and principles and traits that these amazingly successful people had?
Well, I looked at myself and figured out that I had those as well. So number one, you have to have a desire to change. That's first and foremost. And there's some people that don't have a desire to do anything. They just want to, live their life and get by. But if you stood on a street corner in any city in this country or any place around the world and asked people if they'd like to make more money, and if you asked 1,000 people, you'd probably get 1,000 yeses, from the homeless person on the street to a corporate executive making $1 million a year. You'd probably get a yes, I want to make more money. But the reality is very few do. Very few break out of that, I don't know what you call it, a getting by mentality. You get a job, you make a living, you adjust your lifestyle to that paycheck, and then you get a raise in pay and you up your lifestyle just a little bit. And so we're always just living paycheck to paycheck, basically, or a little bit behind and big debt and that type of thing. So if they have a desire, that it starts there. And I always had that burning desire from the time I was 6 years old. I wanted to be the best I knew how to be, not the best cotton picker, not the best factory worker, even though I became the best factory worker out of 9,000 people within a few months. But I didn't strive to do that. I just competed with myself. But I had a desire to do something more, but I just couldn't figure it out. And this came along. So desire is not enough, but you have to have that. And the second thing is, which is so critical, is you've got to be willing to make a firm decision that doesn't allow for anything less than that. Not how to get there. Let's talk financially. Let's say somebody makes a decision they want to be a millionaire. They want to have $1 million cash liquid in the bank. Most people will go looking for the opportunity before they make the decision. But that's a faulty approach, because when you make a decision to have something, when I sat there that night, I said, I'm going to get rich doing this. Now, I didn't know what rich was, but I knew it was a lot more money than I had and than I was earning. So once you make a decision to do something, your view of the world changes. And the view that the world has of you changes. So when you think about that, if I didn't want to make $1 million, I wouldn't see the opportunity. I wouldn't even look for the opportunities. Why would I? Why would I open my mind to an opportunity to make $1 million in the next year? So, but if you decide to do it, now your mindset has changed and it determines how you show up. And if you go out to raise money, people for a business, the investors buy you first before they buy anything else. If they don't buy you, then, if you don't have the right mindset and they don't feel good about you, they're not going to put the money in, even if it's the best product ever. So you gotta make that decision. And that applies in any area of your life. It could be finances, it could be health, it could be losing weight, if you're going to do it, we live in a black and white world. We don't live in a gray world. And every action you take once you've decided to do something is going to move you toward that or away from it. It's that simple. You want to lose weight, but yet you want to stop at McDonald's or some fast food place and have lunch. It doesn't work, So a lot of people make decisions. If that was a decision, that circle, most people make decisions with a little opening at the top. And that's their escape route. That's their excuse as to why it didn't work. But you gotta close that gap, man. And it's got to be firm. And that's what I learned from my first business. But I see it in all of these people. They make decisions and they go for it. And as soon as they make the decision, they take action. They don't wait. They don't wait to get everything in order. They don't wait. Now, some things you got to get in order, but there's also actions you can take now that will advance you toward that objective. So it may be little steps in the beginning and maybe big steps, but people are, I see it all the time back in the direct sales thing. Well, I can't get started until I have my business card. I'm going, come on, let's just go. I don't even have a business card. Why not? I said, because people remember me. I don't need to give them a card to remember me. And that's the way it works. You've got to make the decision. You got to have the decision, take action on a daily basis. And I saw people back then, they'd go out and talk to 8 or 10 people and business doesn't work. They quit. Well, let me ask you, if you invested $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 into a business and 8 people came in your store and didn't buy, would you quit? No, because you have a big investment. But 4,000, maybe I can lose that and move on. Or 300 for sure. I'll talk to 2 people if it doesn't work. I haven't lost that much. So you've got to take action on a daily basis that moves you in the direction you want to go. You want to write a book? Well, then at least write a page every day. I've written 15 books and English was my worst subject. That's why I quit school, in fact. But most of my books are about 300 pages. And when I decide to write one, I usually write it in about 30 days. And I write 10 pages a day. Not that hard to do, 3,000 words or so, and you got it done in 30 days. So you got to move forward on your project. And then in today's world especially, but I think even back then, you've got to be bold. And you've got to do things that the average person out there is not willing to do. And all of these people that I interviewed were bold. I mean, from Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank to Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank to Bill Bartmann, who was one of the 23rd richest men in America at one point. They were all bold. I mean, just amazing, to be around them. And so you got to put yourself in the spotlight, because the spotlight's not going to track you down. You got to take center stage. You got to put yourself out there. You got to take some risk. And I'm not saying being reckless, but you got to take some risk. Otherwise, might as well put a sheet over your head and put you in the corner and bring you 3 meals a day, and live out your life that way. But what a way to live, So.
All right. Amazing stuff. Let's define it for everybody listening. So the first thing you talked about was this desire, this burning desire for more, that there's more to life, that there is this amazing life that we can all have, but we have to have the desire to make that choice. And then that's the next step, the decision. You're making a decision, and there's no plan B. There's no fallback plan. It's I'm going all in. And usually there is a form of financial investment. In this case, for you, it was the high $4,000 package, because people who pay attention, and the same person that could have gotten the same thing, but it was given to them for $5 or for free, they're not going to take the action because they haven't paid. They haven't made that investment. So once you've made the decision, you've gone all in, there's no plan B, then it's consistent action that you're taking, and you're getting closer every single day. And that's a good start. But then you've got to be bold. You have to You have to be in the spotlight, and you have to, do things different and think different than everyone.
Exactly it. I mean, and the amount that you invest in something, or the commitment you have toward it, it varies sometimes. Because I met a woman one time that started in a direct sales company, and she borrowed $50, and she said, no, she didn't. She talked somebody into buying a $50 product from her, and the minimum to start was $50. So she got the product, bought the product, and then sold it, and got her $50 back, and then invested in the company with her $50. And then when she would sell another package, she would save that money, sell another, save that money. Pretty soon she put in more money, came to a higher level, and she ended up a multimillionaire, starting with $50 and that she borrowed. So, you could do that, but not too many people will go to that extreme. They want it faster than that. But she had the vision, and I've seen multiple. I saw an 80-year-old grandmother that was living in her car, completely broke. And 6 months later, she's making like 20 grand a month. And I saw her on stage earlier, and she was shaking like this with the microphone. And 6 months later, man, she's commanding an audience of 1,000 people, just pacing back and forth on the stage and saying, "You think you can't do this? Let me tell you my story." So there's people like that, but you got to have that kind of passion to an intention to do it. And I was asked on a panel a few years back, what's one thing that you've learned that's been the most beneficial to you in your career? And without any hesitation, I said, the ability to let go. And I said, well, let go of what? And I said, let go of failure, let go of trying to control things you can't control. I said, people burn up all of their energy, focus on what didn't work. The way I met Kevin Harrington, I produced an infomercial, and Kevin was the infomercial king. He actually invented the television infomercial.
As seen on TV.
Yeah. So as seen on TV, you're right. So I produced this infomercial. Well, Kevin called me. I'd never met him before. He called me up and he said, "Man, this is Kevin Harrington." He said, "I'm in the infomercial business." I didn't know who he was. And he said, I just saw your show this morning. He said, "What an incredibly professional looking, one of the best shows I've ever seen." He said, "Just incredible. Congratulations." I went, wow. That was, and when I found out who he was, I'm going, wow, that's pretty good. Because I produced it myself. And he's the one in the business. I'm not in the business. But the ability to let go is something I learned with that one too, because I ran that show one day, and I ran it in like 50 stations, and it didn't work. It didn't pull. And so I made a couple of tweaks, spent another $50,000. And I'd spent almost $1 million putting this thing together. And I made those tweaks, put it back out there, tested it again, still didn't work. And I thought, okay, well, I just spent $1 million. And so I can either feel sorry for myself, or I can just move on and do something else. I mean, nothing I can do about it. I could keep throwing $50,000 at it, trying to retest it, but I didn't. And I figured, well, I got some good video footage out of it. And, that was it. So, letting go is not hard. And people think it is. Sometimes it's harder, but we make it harder because we think we're hanging on to something that it protects us from something else, from that happening again. We hang on to that failure that we had, that protects us from it ever happening again. Because I don't want to forget that. But letting go to me is like, if I'm carrying this pen in my hand, do I have to carry it in my hand for the rest of my life? No, I can lay it down. That's how simple letting go can be, is to lay it down. If you can't correct it, there's something action you can take, something you can do. By all means, take action. But if there's not, let go. Move on. Otherwise, you're just you're burning up energy, your creative energy, your stamina, you're burning it up. And I think most people spend about 80% of their time in what I would consider a non-resourceful state of mind. Thinking about tomorrow, worrying about the past. Well, is this going to happen? Can I pay the bills? Can I do that? Instead of focusing on what gets results. So you don't have to worry about all those things. So much easier to make money than it is to be broke. I think you'll agree with that, even if you've never been broke. I have. So
100%.
So it's easier to do the job. So the ability to let go, I think, is a critical one. And I saw that in all of these people. Bill Bartmann, a good example. Unfortunately, he passed away recently. And Bill was a great guy, billionaire. He was worth 23 billion at one point.
Yeah.
Quite a while back. And we became close friends. And how we did it was I called his office. I'd heard about him. So I called his office. And the woman answered, and I said, "Is Bill in?" She said, "He just stepped out for about 5 minutes. He'll be back." I said, "Well, could you have him call me?" She said, "Well, who is this?" I said, "Jim Britt." He said, "Well, will he know you?" And I said, "He will when he gets on the phone with me." And she said, "Well, what's this about? Because he'll want to know." I said, "Well, just tell him I'm going to advance his financial status." And she laughs, and she said, "Okay, I'll tell him." I said, "Okay, here's my number." 5 minutes, he calls me. And we get in a great conversation, probably talked for an hour. And later I interviewed him. And I asked him, I said, "Bill, why did you agree for me to interview you?" He said, "Well, because you asked." And I said, why did you take my phone call?" He said, curiosity got me. He said, "I kind of liked your approach." So we became great friends after that. But you got to do things that are a little bit bold. I mean, what if he'd said, "No, I don't want to call him back. I haven't lost anything. So why not?" So that's, life can be so much easier, and business can be so much easier if we don't complicate it and live in the past or the future.
No question. And so then throughout your career, you were able to do some pretty amazing things. You got involved in the seminar industry after it seems like direct selling there and network marketing. And in the seminar industry, you partnered up with Jim Rohn. You were actually mentoring and coaching Tony Robbins at one point.
Right.
What was the start like in that seminar industry, and what were the results that you guys were helping people to get with that seminar industry? And obviously a lot of different things there.
A lot, yeah. But how it all came about, Jim Rohn, the company, the direct sales company I was involved in, Jim Rohn was a trainer there. And he wasn't known. Nobody knew him except within that company. And we became friends. And 2 years later, that company closed their doors in the US. And we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. So I moved, Jim moved, and we lost touch with each other. We didn't pass on new phone numbers or anything. And so I was like, God, I'd really like to connect with Jim Rohn again. I mean, I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't think about let's go in business together or anything like that. So I flew to Arizona in Phoenix, looking at some property. I was going to do some building and a warehouse building. And I walked into a little coffee shop one morning to have breakfast. There sat Jim Rohn. and what I didn't realize that he had a place in Phoenix, and he was building a bunch of houses. And I'm going, wow, I come to Phoenix to buy property to do some building. And so we sat down and had breakfast together, and he said, "Why don't you join me in business?" I said, "Doing what?" He said, "Promoting my seminars." And I said, "Well, how does that work?" He said, "Well, we'll sell tickets for $15. And, we'll rent a room." He said, "I'll pay for the room rental. I'll make sure I'm here, and I'll do the seminar. You go out and sell the tickets, and we'll split the money." So I thought, even if I sell 1,000 tickets, I only make $7,500. And I thought, well, I really love Jim Rohn, so I like what he's doing. And I thought, I'll do one. So I'm surprised he even partnered up with me after this, but he rented a room for 400 people. That's what I told him I could put in the room. And I went out and I had about 450 people that said, yes, I'll be there. But what I didn't know is I didn't know I needed to collect the money up front. I thought they'll just pay at the door. Well, Jim comes down from his room at about 7:25 and the seminar starts at 7:30. There's like 4 people in the room. And by 7:30, we have 14 people. And one of those people, 2 of them actually, one was a friend of mine. One was Tom Hopkins, the sales trainer.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And one was my best friend who managed Tom Hopkins. So they both came. And Jim gets up and does, I think, the best seminar I've ever heard him do, to 14 people in a room that would seat 400. And they're scattered all over the place. I'm just going, wow, how can he do that? It just impressed me. And so I'm standing at the door. I feel about this high. And Tom Hopkins walks out, and I knew Tom pretty well. And he walks out and he stops. He said, Jimmy, he said, that was one of the best seminars I've ever heard in my entire life. He said, but you need more people. And walks on. I'm going, oh my God. It's like stick the knife in and turn it. And so Jim and I got together afterwards for a glass of wine. And I said, Jim, give me another chance. I said, I guarantee you I'll have 1,000 people in the room. I said, but this time I'm collecting the money up front. And sure enough, I did. I had capacity for the ballroom. So it was about 1,000 people. And then a few months later, I decided to move to Southern California and open up that area. And so I started hiring salespeople. Jim didn't know this. He said, all I want is $750 per ticket. Okay. So I raised the price of the ticket to $35. And I was paying Jim $750, and then I was paying my salespeople. But I pay them like $15 to sell the ticket, and I got what's left. And then I decided to raise it to $60, and I paid like $30 to get it sold, or $25, something like that. And then I told Jim, and so we started splitting, what was left instead of him getting $750, because I was making way more money. And he had a little home study course that had 6 cassettes and 6 workbooks that he wanted to sell for $100. And he said, you can have half of that. And he said, I'll take the other half and pay for the product. And so I raised the price of that to $500. And we split that as well. But then we ended up doing leadership seminars and that type of thing that we sold for, I think we sold for about $1,000, and did those up at a ranch in Northern California, but just built a business around it. And in Orange County, California, we had about 1,000 people a week going through events for at least 5 years. I mean, I think we had, at one point we counted, we had 1/8 of the population attended our events in Orange County.
Wow. Okay.
So it was, and people would buy, we had round tables and people would buy a whole table. And we had one family that bought it every single month. Once a month, they bought that table and the whole family came. And we just saw people transforming, and Jim just had a way of presenting what he had, and very simple stuff, nothing complicated. And
what were some of the problems that you were solving for people? What were the solutions that you guys were presenting them at that time that was just, because clearly it was unique. Clearly it was something that was different that not a lot of people were doing at that time.
Yeah. I was the first person ever to sell a ticket to a live event, a live seminar. And it's took off from there over the years, but it was a lot of different things. Jim had he had little sayings that he did, little stories that he told. And I remember walking into a real estate office one time, and I met with this woman, and I went into her office, the broker, and she had a sign behind her desk, and I'd sold her the ticket to the seminar. And she said, I just want to thank you. And I said, for what? She said, convincing me to go to that seminar. And the little saying she had on a plaque, a nice framed saying, was, you will endure one of two pains in life, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. And she said, that's really what I got from the seminar, just that. Another woman who was also in real estate, as I went in and sold tickets to the group in an office, and this woman, she said, I really want to go, but I don't have the money. I said, so you don't have $60? No, I don't have the money. I said, and then she said, well, I do have the money, but it's money for food for my son and I for the week. And I said, then you need to go. If that's all you have, you need to go. She said, you mean you would take my last $60 for this seminar? I said, yes, I would. I said, not for me though. I'd take it for you. She said, if you will take it, I'll give it to you. I just can't believe you'll take it. I said, hand it over. And she gave me her last $60. And I said, by the way, bring your son with you. And her son was, I think, 8 or 9, something like that. And she went on to be the #1 salesperson for Century 21. I don't remember if it was nationwide. They did a big write-up on her in a newspaper. And she was making huge amounts of money. And in the write-up, she said, what did it for me was this guy that came back by and took my last $60 to go to a seminar. Otherwise, I'd never be here where I am. And what she got out of it, I think it's just a lot of things. But when she left the seminar, she stopped at the door where I was standing. She hugged me. She thanked me. She was in tears. And I looked at her son and I said, so what did you get out of the seminar? He said, I learned that goals are things people get and wishes are for poor people. I said, all right. So I haven't tracked the son. I don't know where he is, but what happened to him over the years. But, we just had a lot of great stories like that and different things, it was all about being successful and being personally fulfilled. And we were focused on helping people in their business mostly, real estate, insurance, sales, different people. And then they would start bringing their families there because they wanted their family to get this philosophy as well. And the newspaper would show up about once a month. And we get a front page thing from the newspaper, the Orange County Register. Remember the first one that came out, it said, Jim Rohn, the prophet of profit. So, and then that's how I started speaking was I developed a series of workshops about a year into our business. And I started doing workshops on each of Jim's subjects. And because he wouldn't do them, Jim just didn't do workshops. So I'd start doing that. And then pretty soon I'm getting engagements and going out and speaking and, making a little money. But I'll never forget my first engagement, big engagement, was a red carpet real estate convention. And it was in New York or New Jersey. And Jim was slated to speak there. And Jim's fee at the time to go for a keynote was $7,500. Well, Jim got caught in Australia and couldn't come back. So the guy calls up and he said, I had to tell him, Jim's not going to be here. And he said, oh my God, I promoted him. And he's the big event. I got pictures of him everywhere. And I said, man, I'm sorry. He's stuck. He can't get out. No flights. He said, well, who else do you have that speaks? And I said, well, I do. And he said, are you any good? I said, yes, I am. Very confident. And I wasn't that good at the time. He said, so what's your fee? And man, that really threw me off because I had no idea I didn't know he was going to ask that question, and I wasn't ready. So I started to answer, and I said, can you hang on 1 second? I said, somebody's at my door. There wasn't anybody at the door. So I stopped and went, what is my fee? And finally, I thought, I can't charge what Jim Rohn does because I'm not as good as he is. All this stuff going through my mind. Finally, I go, oh, sorry about that. I said, my fee is what you're asking. It's $5,000. And he said, I said, plus expenses. And he said, okay, you got it. And I hung up the phone. I'm going, $5,000 for an hour? So that was my first paid speaking engagement. I had had a couple of others that were maybe $100 or something, I just went from there and started developing my own materials and things over the years. And then I kind of changed my philosophy in some areas, and it's like, I don't believe in goal setting. People ask me if I write my goals down. I'm going, no, I remember them. I don't have to write them down. And, do I know what I'm going to do 5 years from now? I have no clue. None. I know what I'm going to do today, but not 5 years from now. And I'm not saying don't plan for 5 years, but I don't. I just let it evolve as we go day to day. And
it always does. It evolves, and what you thought you'd be doing 3 years from now is completely different next month, and you're already on a different trajectory.
And without that decision that you're making, goal setting doesn't work anyway. See, the decision is the foundation. The goals are the incremental steps to get there. And people have that turned around. They create their vision boards and they say, this is all of my goals. Well, where's the foundation? Where's the decision to have those? Because I tried those things too. I had vision boards. I had stuff written on paper on my ceiling when I would wake up in the morning, some positive things, or here's what I'm going to accomplish, or a picture of a boat or a new car or whatever. And they were everywhere. They were on my mirrors. They were everywhere, and never worked for me. So finally, I just kind of went day to day. So yeah, that's just me. So it doesn't
win in the day. So, yeah. And then in those early years too, you had someone who was working with you and Jim, and that was Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? And
well, Tony, somebody sold him a ticket to the seminar, one of our salespeople. And so Tony attended and just got blown away with it. He was 18. Actually, he was 17. And then he came to get interviewed. He wanted to go to work for us. And I said, well, man, you're 17 years old. I can't hire you. So he comes back on his 18th birthday. And he said, now I'm 18 now, can I go to work? It had only been a couple months or something. And he kept coming to the seminars too. He would hang out at the seminars. And so I said, well, before you go to work, I said, you gotta go to all of our programs. I said, you gotta buy the home study course. You gotta go to the leadership retreat. He said, well, how much is all of that? And I said, total of $1,080. He said, I don't have $1,080. I said, well, come back when you do. And I just passed him off. I mean, he was kind of he was 6'7", and I'm 6'4". So I'm looking up to this kid, but he was kind of sloppy dressed, a little bit overweight. And, I think he had white socks on with his slacks, and, just like a guy used to know, he'd take two different colors of socks and put them on. He didn't care. Tony wasn't quite that bad, but I thought, this kid, he's never going to do anything, So the next morning he comes in with $1,080 and drops it on my desk. He said, now can I go to, I said, well, as soon as you get the course and as soon as you go through the leadership. So he did all of that, and he came back and went to work. And he was number one. I had 300 salespeople. He was number one his second month. Out of 300.
His second month. Wow.
I mean, he was an animal, and he kind of walked a little bit hunched over. And I said, straighten up and wear, we got to dress you. You got to have a suit, because back then everybody wore a suit and tie and 3-piece suits and stuff. And I sent him over to my tailor, Benny, and I called Benny in advance, and I said, there's this great big guy coming over. And I said, whatever he wants to look like. I said, here's what I want him to look like when he leaves. So, Tony dressed himself up, and man, he went out there and tore it up. And then he broke out on his own, and he had to come back to me for a little coaching on some things he was doing because he was broke again, trying to do it on his own. And but he caught some breaks, man. I mean, he, the Walking on Fire was one. And then the television infomercial, that infomercial, my understanding, ran for 8 years, every 5 minutes, someplace in the world. So it's a lot of exposure, man.
It is. Did he ever tell you where he got the 1,080?
Oh, he went to the bank and borrowed it.
Oh, just like you.
The bank to borrow it. I mean, at 18 years old, this kid, I mean, that taught me that he could sell, because I mean, what banker is going to give you, money like that? And back then it was quite a bit of money. I mean, $1,000. And it was funny. I was up in Montreal doing a seminar years back, and somebody said, "Did you know Tony Robbins is doing a seminar in the hotel next door?" I said, "No." So I'll go over there and have a chat with him. So I said, "Yeah, he's in his third day," and I was just winding mine up, and mine was a 2-day. I had about 500 people. He had about 2,000. And so I went over there, and the room was empty. They were on break or lunch. And I caught somebody at the door, and I said, I want to see Tony. Is he here? He said, "Well, do you have a ticket?" And I said, "No, I'm just a friend of his." He said, "Yeah, everybody's a friend of Tony's." I said, "No, I'll tell Tony I'm here. I want to talk to him." So we go way back, and he said, "Yeah, right." He said, "No, you can't come in." And so about that time, Tony's dad walks by the door, and he goes, "Jim, Britt, come on in." So I go in, and Tony's just coming back in from lunch, backstage. And so I went back, we talked for a little bit, and he said, "Go out and have a seat. Go get one of the front row seats out here." And he said, "Listen for a while." I said, "Okay." So I go out and sit down, and I figured I'd stay for a couple of hours. And he gets up and tells a story about how he got started. And when he gets to the part where the guy said $1,080, and he says, and how he went out and got it. And he said, "Now, some of you may not believe that story, but he said, the guy that took my $1,080 is right here on the front row. Stand up." So at the next break, I've got this huge crowd around me, mostly wanting to know, what was it like working with Tony back then? It was pretty funny. But anyway, we're still in touch today. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he definitely is. I remember we had the chance to sponsor ClickFunnels live event that Russell Brunson does, and Tony was one of the sponsors with us and the keynote speaker, and it was phenomenal, being listening to him and message. So Jim, what an amazing life. And then along the way, you had 6 boys. And from what I understand, they've been very successful and entrepreneurial. And for a lot of us with kids, we'd love to dream someday that our children become entrepreneurial, that they are successful and happy. What were some of the keys to success in being such a great dad?
Well, I think it's more about who you are versus what you say. They observe you. I had all 4 of my kids, or my last 4 that are entrepreneurs, together one time years back, and I said, "Yeah, have you guys ever thought about just getting a job?" And all of them looked at me like, "What?" And one of them go, "Dad," he said, "you've never had a job?" And I said, "Yeah, I did." I said, "I had a job once, a couple of times." And he said, "Not since we've known you." He said, and the other one says, "I'm never working for the man." He said, "I'm gonna work for myself." And so they were shocked. But I just set the example, that I'm doing things I love doing. They see me doing it. They listen in on some of the things I do. And then once a week, as my wife homeschooled our children, once a week I did a class in entrepreneurship. And I made it simple because, I could never have homeschooled them myself, but I do know entrepreneurship. And so I'd take a topic, like integrity, or building your network of contacts was one of them. And I remember my 12-year-old at the time, he was the youngest. And So I said, you've got to build your network. And I explained what that was. And he said, so Dad, how big is your network? He wanted to challenge me. I said, well, pick any city, in any major city over 300,000 people in this country, and I'll make a phone call or give you the number to call somebody, or I could go there and have a place to stay and a meal to eat. He said, no way. I said, pick a city. And he thinks for a minute, and he doesn't want to pick one close or anything like that. And he said, okay, Cleveland, Ohio. And I said, oh, John and Joel Batante are just really close friends of mine. They both worked for me back when I was with Jim Rohn, and we've maintained contact. They're very successful. They're, John loves to play golf. In fact, I talked to him 3 days ago, caught him on the golf course, and he said, okay, well, let me think about another city. And he said, New Jersey, or he said New York, just New York. And I named off like 5 or 6 people real quickly in New York. But every city there may have been some that I didn't have a contact in, but every city he picked, I had somebody. And then he challenged me and he said, where's the phone number? And back then I had an address book and I had everything in the address book, and I pull it out. Here it is right here. God, he said, how did you do that? And I said, well, you get to know people and you help them along the way. Maybe they work for you. Maybe you did something good for them. But you're not asking of anything for these people, from the people. I said, just do good things. And I said, you'll have a network. And, so I took topics like that, and I would talk about, like, what's the value of integrity? It's the foundation. It should be anyway, the foundation for any business, because integrity builds trust. And whether it's a relationship personally or relationship in business, if you have integrity, people trust you. If they trust you, they'll be open to you. If they're open to you, they'll bond with you. And if they bond with you, you've got a relationship.
Absolutely.
If you look at your own personal relationship, husband, wife, whatever, a significant other, that's what happened. Unless somebody oversold you on something, and that can happen too, but yeah.
No question. Well, Jim, this has been an amazing podcast episode. It's probably going to be our favorite one of all time. The stories, the experiences. How can the audience connect with Jim Britt, and how can they potentially work with you, or get some of your courses, or learn just the mountain of information, knowledge, and success that you've achieved?
Well, you can go to jimbritt.com. That's BRITT, jimbritt.com. And I've got a lot of different courses and things on there. But one of the online courses I just created a few months back, getting great results, already got great testimonies on it. It's called Cracking the Rich Code. And you can go to crackingtherichcode.com. And basically it's designed, it's a 4-month course. You get messages every single day, and bigger messages every week, and videos and different things that you do during that 4 months. And it's designed to change your relationship to money, your subconscious programming and your relationship to money. And then I have a program I'm doing with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. And it's a book series, plus I'd say it's a PR, marketing, branding, and lead generation for coaches, speakers, and entrepreneurs. And it's a chance to have a chapter in a book with us that Tony Robbins endorsed, and have your picture on the cover of the book. So it's a great credibility thing for people starting up, or if they need a boost in their business. It's a great book. The first 5 have gotten #1 international best-selling status, and we're filling up #6 right now. So if you're interested in that, just email me at support@jimbritt.com.
Guys, Jim Britt, JimBritt.com. It's right there. Jim Britt Coaching as well. Just some amazing information. 15 books. Is that right? Are they available on Amazon, or where can we get all your books?
Most of them a few of them are out of print, but most of them are available either Amazon or on my website. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go shopping as soon as we finish here and go ahead and grab some of those. And Jim, I just want to thank you again. It was just a phenomenal hour and just amazing information. And you're probably going to, if you're listening to this, you're going to want to listen to it and take notes a few times, because he pretty much outlined the formula for success in life and business.
Well, I appreciate you having me here. For sure.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jim. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Are you looking for more seven-figure secrets, content, or even how you can launch your own recession-proof business? Then check out sevenfigures.com. That's the digit 7, FIGURES.com, where we share more videos, stories, strategies, funding solutions, entrepreneurial education, and even the secret business type that's recession-proof. Thank you for listening, and if you're finding value in our podcast, please give us a 5-star and invite others to join the club.